Today on the Sarah Jane Show, I'm chatting with Cyrus Khan, who is a self professed teacher, tracer, physicist, and full time monkey. That's right. Cyrus is a parkour athlete and instructor who co founded the Mumbai Parkour and Mumbai Movement Academy and is currently working on a project in the Department of Condensed Matter Physics at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. I mean, like, who is this guy? So let's find out how he balances physics and parkour and the art, or well, the science of finding stillness in movement. I wanted to start off by asking you the obvious question, which to me was very obvious because I met you through parkour. And I had no idea that you had this whole other persona as a human being and were actually a physicist as well. So, how did this happen? Because I feel like we live in culturally we're very encouraged to pursue academics, and you did that a lot and thus became a physicist. And then you took up parkour. So how did this happen? How did this sort of transition happen?
So I think it's helpful to notice that when I started out, I was always interested in many things, whether it was science, jumping about, public speaking, teaching, random stuff. But I think science has always been a part of my life because my mother is actually a lifetime college professor
Ah,
and also worked in science research.
okay.
So it was always around the house. And I think that was a really great influence on getting to see what science is really like. You know what they teach you in school? It's really
We're
not.
not,
It's
yeah,
really
we're
not.
not, we're not going to go there. That would be a whole other
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah. So suffice to say that I was lucky enough to get a real good glimpse at what real science was like, and I loved it ever since I was a kid. It's very simple, really. Science is just the process of being curious about things and trying honestly to find answers to them. It's just about it.
I like that definition.
So yeah, everything else is stuff that happens in the middle,
Right.
you know. So in that regard, it was pretty simple. And then throughout school, as I started playing more sports and things, like I always liked it. But then down came the internet into my life, and uh, I happened across crazy videos of people doing amazing things
Yeah.
like breakdancing and parkour
Mm-hmm.
and many other things. And I was like, yeah, that's nice. I'm gonna do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it just started as simple as that. It was just something that I thought was cool. We ended up practicing it. And somehow, sometimes 5 years go by, and then you realize, oops, I may actually be good at this. Um, and that's how it became a larger part of my life. Um, so, science was going on constantly throughout. I got my degree in physics.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Why did you pick
but then I
physics?
think, very good question. Um, Physicists are well known to arrogantly portray the fact that physics is the best
Yeah.
out of all the sciences. Um, I think that hubris comes partially because you could say we're dealing with the most fundamental pieces of the universe, like the smallest and the biggest ones. But you know, every scientist will make an argument for their field pretty convincingly. I always liked physics because there was no end to it. Like physics could answer most questions that went deep, 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 deep down and way, 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 way up. And every sometimes physics was like the application of mathematics as well. It's like mathematics helped you understand stuff, but physics was really what applied it in the real world. So I got my degree in physics, and when I finished college, this was about 5, 6, 7 years into parkour already at this point. Uh, I think I had pretty well decided that I was not cut out for a 9 to 5 type existence. I most particularly would not work well with a boss.
Mm-hmm.
authority and me uh, get along like humans in a vacuum. So essentially, I actually started working in research on a
Right.
project
Yeah.
rather than continuing down the rabbit hole of getting one more degree and then another degree
Mm-hmm.
and then some sort of degree based job.
Mm-hmm.
And landed up getting a very, very nice position at people in Bombay may know this, the Tata Institute of Fundamental
Mm-hmm.
Research. Um, it's in Navy Nagar. It's one of India's most premier research institutions. And I just happened to make a nice, convenient pitch at the time. And my advisor, Dr. R. Vijayaraghavan, was very, very kind enough to take me on to work on a simple project that had come up in his lab that no one else had time for. Lucky for me, that project ended up being extremely relevant in 3 months. And then I started doing more and more work. And I now have spent the last 5 years building and understanding and developing quantum computers
Of course you
at the
have.
Tata Institute. Of course, I have. So that's still going on actually. The project, um, too many details I can't share because it is still a atomic research defense project and some levels of
These are
secrecy come with
rather
it.
big words that we're
Uh,
using
yeah,
first thing in the morning.
yeah.
Right. Okay. Wow. When do you find the time? And you're doing this in the middle of like jumping off things and and jumping under things and rolling and stuff. How do you like?
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting because people find it really hard to and constantly make up excuses for why they have to do one thing or the other. And you've done both and done it successfully. You've also been certified as a parkour athlete and you've been a part of many contests. You also do a lot of charitable work by teaching kids parkour, etc. So, how do you manage to balance all of this?
So sometimes people forget physics is actually my hobby. Like I do this full-time research position as a hobby, really.
Right,
Um, yeah.
right.
So one of the nice things that ended up happening when I started parkour and teaching parkour is we happened to be the first and only people teaching parkour in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we decided let's start a business, and so we started a company, and we started teaching parkour. And lo and behold, now we have 3 centers suddenly in the state.
Yeah,
Uh,
congratulations. I can't wait.
thank you. Yes. And so that's actually now become my primary means of work,
Right.
which is very, very cool, I think, because it allows us to be our own bosses,
Mm-hmm.
also allows us to decide when and how we want to work,
Mm-hmm.
which is a big important factor for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there is this joke. It's like I didn't want to work a 9 to 5. Now I work 24 hours a
Yes,
day.
I've been
Uh,
seeing that going around a lot on as a meme. But is it like that?
yeah, it's true, but the difference is, I think, when you're doing stuff that you choose to do that you really enjoy, it doesn't feel like work. I think this distinction between work and play is kind of this made up false thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think once you find things that you that align with you and you feel connected with,
Mm-hmm.
then the separation doesn't exist anymore. There's no such thing as work and not work. There's play and not play. Like all of it melds together.
Yeah.
Each of my classes are ways that I choose to spend my time.
Yeah. So I have to stop you right there and ask you another question because this is something that a lot of people strive to do, right? Is that they strive to make what they do, um, as in their 9 to 5 or whatever it is that their source of income, basically, something that they truly enjoy doing and try to manage this place where they want to make their work their play, their make their passion their job, etc., etc. And you seem to have defined this very well as to, you've clearly said that physics is your hobby and then doing parkour has now become, of course, where your income pretty much comes from. How did this happen? Did you make a conscious decision? Did you just go with the flow and then it sort of revealed itself to you? I know you said that you made the decision just after college that you didn't want to do a 9 to 5. So that was one very strong decision that you made. But just for everyone else listening, I think it would be interesting to know, like, how does one actually get there without so much resistance? Because there's so much of expectations and what you should be doing and you have to do and all that kind of stuff.
I didn't say there was no resistance.
Ah, good.
Uh,
Talk to me about it.
but uh, first, I will say you can't plan your way through this, or at least I didn't. Maybe some people can, but a lot of it is absolute happenstance, and things you totally out of your control. Just good opportunities that ended up. I think through being at the right place at the right time, doing the right things in the right way for the right people. But definitely think that this is, if you try too hard to force it, it's not going to happen. I think a good indicator of whether it is right for you to do or not is, are people asking you to do it? You know,
Nice.
let's say you want to become a freelance videographer. It's like, sure, you may want it real, real bad, but if like nobody else does,
Yeah,
you know,
if there's no
you're not going to
demand for
produce
what you're
value.
supplying, then yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. You have to. I think it all boils down to the way I explained it is creating value.
Right.
Do you create value with what you do? Because I actually don't think it's wrong to have hobbies and do things only for yourself,
Yeah.
especially if you really enjoy them. Um, but if the thing that you're doing also happens to create value, then you can try to leverage it in terms of a job. I never went out too hard convincing people to come to my class, you know? I, I, I just like, hi, I do this thing. You want to come? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And that's the extent of our marketing. Um,
But
we
your
just,
classes speak for themselves, huh? Like once you showed up, because that's kind of like what happened with me. Like I showed up to one of your classes and then I was hooked. There was nothing else that needed to be said or done. There was just this infectious energy. And I remember thinking about this just before we were doing the interview about how I felt after I got done with my first parkour session. Because parkour can be a bit intimidating when you see people doing all these acrobatics, etc. But I think that the way I felt just after doing just a couple moves was sort of, I think the word is confident. And I felt like I had worked out, but I had played at the same time. And I left this class feeling like I could conquer the world. And that's a very addictive feeling. So thank you.
fantastic.
Something else that I want to sort of want to have you speak into is, so you've obviously, I don't know whether this comes from your love of physics or not, but there's a lot of value that you put into moving and sort of achieving stillness through movement. This is something that I think you believe in and you've spoken about, even, which I think is a very contradictory thought to the usual and the norm, which is people think that if you sit in one place and meditate and sort of spend time in stillness and not move too much, that's when you find the stillness. So I want you to speak into that a little bit about how moving helped you find a sense of stillness. Or if not stillness, what did you find?
I think the first part where people get confused is that they read into it so much, like this movement, that movement, what to do, why to do it. The biggest issue is I don't think people understand really what they're doing, and it takes a bit of a mature perspective. But essentially, I look at the human body is our, who we are. It is our portal to the rest of the world. It is our instrument, our vehicle. It's everything that we do as who we are, is through our bodies. And moving is just a way of playing that instrument. It's how we communicate with the world, it's how we exist, it influences our thoughts. So, people ask me, why is your class called the movement class? I also do movement, I shake my ass. But I think what they miss is that this class is really a study of our, like, our personal instrument. And what we can do with every single part of it. You know, people, when they think of a musical instrument, think about it. It can really, you like think about a guitar. You play it with sometimes with a pick on the strings, but then other people can also play it with their fingers. Other people tap the flat wooden part. Other people can just press the strings and make noises. But imagine an instrument where every single part of it can express. You have control over how the sound comes out. You can even take a bow to it if you're skilled enough. A human body is an instrument with like virtually unlimited possibility. And that's just the physical side of it. If you think about us, we are instruments that play itself.
That's
So
beautiful.
imagine, yeah.
Yeah.
People don't, I feel like it's something that should be so obvious. It's like, who am I and how am I in this world existing, interacting, and can I control that, influence that? That's what the movement practice is about.
It's in
And
essence, it's the most natural thing, right, for us to do. But did you though? Did you find was there like I said, how I felt when I got done with my first class, right? There was a sense of confidence and there was a sense of stillness, and I'll explain what I mean by stillness, because for me, the beauty is that I meditate every day, right? And it takes a while to still the mind, even though I've been doing it for many, many, many years now. However, 5 minutes into my parkour practice, there was literally no other thought going through my head. Like, even if I wanted to, it was physically and mentally impossible for any other thought to be going through my head while I was practicing, which means that, and this is the belief in yoga, right? Is that you go through the body to get to the mind. Is that's why it's called the yoga practice. That's why there are so many asanas, is that you perform the asanas, you control your breath, you let the breath flow, and then at some point you get to a place where you're absolutely still because there's no other thoughts going through your head. And that's really something that I truly acknowledge about the practice of parkour. And I wanted to know, did you have a moment when is this where your addiction to it came from, if I can call it that?
100% obsession is a good word.
Okay, great.
So let me talk a little bit more about this, because this is also something that I think first we have to ask ourselves the question, why are we trying to do this, you know? I love, this is something I've learned from physics, that's influenced my entire movement journey. Just always asking simple questions. Why? Why are we even trying to still the mind?
Are you asking me?
Sarah, why are you trying to still the mind? Yeah.
Oh, that's a heavy one. Suddenly the tables have turned. You're interviewing me. Why am I trying to still my mind? I feel that, honestly, I feel that if I take just a few minutes at the start of every day to still my mind, I find that I have a more productive day. It just helps me channel my thoughts better. That's all. And to be clear, when I say stilling the mind, I don't mean trying to control the flow of thoughts. I just mean trying to create space between those thoughts so that they don't get too overwhelming. Is that fair enough, teacher? Did I get 100 marks? Say yes already.
This is the beautiful part. This is the beautiful part. As soon as we start to ask ourselves these questions, so much more comes up. I'll give you another example. Imagine if you couldn't still your own body. Imagine if, as you were trying to do everything, like parts of your body were moving out of your control, and like no matter how much you try to control this pen, it is just shaking everywhere. It's being yanked in this direction.
That sounds
You're just
horrifying.
trying to paint.
And slightly like
Exactly,
you're possessed.
right? Exactly. We take for granted that the simple reason we can do everything that we can do is because we have control over where it goes, when, and at what time. Of course, there are now conditions where it becomes harder to do a certain thing. So sometimes what we do is we, for example, hold a heavy weight in our hand, heavy weight. And we practice keeping our hand there,
Yeah.
despite the weight resisting its presence.
Yeah.
Because again, why? The ability to control its position, movement is fundamental to being able to do anything with it.
Right.
Now take that and apply it to our mind. The simple ability of controlling it is ultimately everything we're doing as each thought is an action of the mind. So meditation, whatever you call it, is just a simple practice of, it's like, can we still our mind is the simplest one. It's like, can we still the hand? That's the simplest one. Can we move it? Is then the next step. So I look at it very simply. It is just a practice of our thought actions in the same way that the physical practice is a practice of our physical actions.
Got it.
And it's no more complicated than that for me.
Got it. I feel like I just got schooled. The guru has spoken. Right.
The funny thing is, a child would have also told you this, but somehow we sometimes complicate things, along the way.
If not all the time. If not all the time. So along your journey, another thing that we've spoken about personally as well, and I wanted to sort of highlight today is, when one is soaring to highs, one often has inevitable lows, and those inevitable lows can come in the form of mental breakdowns or injuries as well. So you can have physical breakdowns as well. And there's this really famous and one of my most favorite quotes by Marie Forleo where she says that a fall is only permanent if you stay down. So I want you to speak into that and speak about sort of injuries, how you've overcome them, how challenging they've been physically, mentally, and if you've ever, which I'm sure you have, pushed yourself to overcome something despite being told medically that you're not supposed to, and how that landed up.
I don't believe in ups and downs.
Okay, then. School me some more, why don't
Yeah.
you?
No,
What do you believe in?
I believe that you can feel like shit, but that doesn't mean you are shit. I feel like a lot of people take their feeling of shit so personally that they feel they temporarily believe that they are shit. And I think, again, these are things that you gain through practice, understandings that, no, it hasn't really changed. Or even if it has changed, it has changed. And then what has changed or hasn't changed isn't what affects us. How we feel about it affects us. So once we realize that if stuff hasn't changed, then it hasn't changed and there's no point feeling shit about it. Or if stuff has changed, then it has changed. Then there's no point feeling shit about it. You can start to not be held so tightly to the roller coaster that life throws at you. And you start to be thrown around a lot less and more voluntarily. Injuries, I think, are a great example. What the struggle is usually is that in scenarios like that, we also have a lot of natural, like intrinsic systems that were designed to draw our attention to the fact that something was wrong. Now, again, if we understand them, then we can react appropriately. The same way that if you were in a building and the fire alarm went off, if you knew what a fire alarm was, you could, like, okay, you don't see any fire around you, you're not going to die immediately. I'll just walk to the fire escape, I'll walk down, I'll walk out the building. But imagine you were in a building and you didn't know what a fire system was. Suddenly these sounds are blaring, like sprinklers are raining down on you. Like, what do? What just happened? Is this an act of God that rain came out of the building and like his proclamation sounded on the speakers? You don't know.
Right.
So I think it's the same with pain, with injury. Once you start to get a better idea of what is going on in the body, you can treat the alarm system, which is pain, like the alarm system that it is. React because it's telling you something, but maybe also check because your friend was cooking some crap stuff in the kitchen and maybe he set it off,
But what I'm trying to get at is, what is your relationship with injury? Because I'm sure you've had many, right? Let's be honest here. How what's been your relationship with it? How have you overcome it? And because it can be challenging for somebody who's, for all intents and purposes, a monkey and hates sitting. You hate sitting. I know you say this all the time. You detest it, in fact. So how do you deal with it when you're sort of like you can't move?
Who says you can't move?
Aha, explain.
I think this is the confusion. Okay, my hand isn't operating perfectly today. I mean, I have the rest of my body that works, my
Right.
mind. Even if all of my parts of my body are um, out of commission for a bit, my mind works. There's always something to,
Play around with?
until you're dead. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
always something.
Yeah.
Now, again, we can sit about and cry, feel sorry about the fact that we can't do what we wanted to do, or again, the rest of the instrument is there to practice and play. I think this is again something that I learned through parkour training really early on, but made more common sense later on as you start to apply it. Is that sometimes we're too attached to one thing, but you realize that sometimes that level of attachment is detrimental and unhealthy. Like you can exist without the things that you were you thought were intrinsic to you. I think I'll give you a good example since you want to talk personally about my injuries. So I've not had a lot of injuries actually.
Ah, okay.
I think in my 15 plus years of serious practice, I've had less than 15 serious injuries.
Okay.
Um,
That's more than
so
average for like an average human
not
being.
really.
But okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I think the average human being, the amount of discomfort they go through for having not done anything, I think
Is
for
far
the
worse.
amount that I
Amen to
do,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
Amen to
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Amen to that. Yeah.
So, and yeah, I mean, if your body's never been injured, then I don't know, were you even really using it? Like, if the strings of a guitar are never worn out, have you even played the
It's
guitar?
like brings me to the cheesy line of, if you've never had your heart broken, have you really loved? Sorry, I had
True,
to.
100%,
But you were about to give me an
100%.
example of an injury that you said that
My
you,
own
yeah,
injury,
yeah.
yeah. I think as one would say, largest injury, I think, would have been like the time I tore the ligaments in my knee. Just one day I was training and there was some moss on the rock that I was jumping to, and the foot slipped. And yeah, again, I before the injury, that event was my worst nightmare.
Oh gosh, okay.
Okay, 100%. Like thing I was most scared of in life. Once that happened, I think the beautiful realization that came up was I'm still here.
Yeah.
I'm right here. Like because again, I think we tie our identity so deeply into our ability to do certain things that we forget that it's not. And we still exist even if that is temporarily taken away. Um, and so it was a huge sense of relief in that sense because like okay, I'm still
I'm
here.
still
I
here.
still have all my students. I still have all my friends.
Yeah.
I think it's again, all of our fears are tied in together. Our fear of injury is tied into our sense of belonging that we have with the practice, and our sense of pleasure, and our sense of social connection. And we are intrinsically afraid. Again, we're not afraid of injury. We're afraid of all the other consequences of it.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
once we realize that the other consequences are not affected,
Yeah.
then we're all a little bit more okay with it. Because
Right.
I realized I still have all my friends, I still have my career, I still have everything.
Yeah.
I taught parkour classes with 3 limbs. 3 limbs is enough.
Jesus. Well, so, and you've taught a lot of parkour classes to, like you've done volunteer parkour. You are a volunteer parkour instructor. I just want to know if if you've seen any like breakthrough stories, literally witness sort of changes in students, and anything that you'd like to share, something that's really inspired you.
Every day, all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I also push my students. You're well
Right.
aware of
Yes,
this.
I'm aware of this.
So things break.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Um, But 100%, I see this all the time. And I think, again, it's not a question of me, it's really a question of I am sharing the idea of practice with people. And the practice helps each person individually break through their own. Because a lot of what we think are barriers are very self imposed, most often when it comes to fear, right? Um, why are people scared when jumping 10 feet and grabbing onto something with their fingers? Like, there's no physical thing before they jump, there's no physical thing that is affecting them, but yet they feel affected, right? That's fear. And you have to realize that, again, if it's not a physical, if it's not something that's there outside, then it's something that's there inside.
Inside, yeah.
And then you start to do it. And then you start to have a dialogue with it, most people think overcoming all of these issues is a momentary, like you have to decide and make that boom, and then you're like, boom.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Yeah.
It's usually like you can't meet your worst enemy and turn him into your best friend with one line. Maybe it happens in the movies, but it doesn't happen in real life.
Right.
Like, this is how, like, first thing you'd do is not freak out when you see your worst enemy. First thing, you just have to have the courage to stand, look at him in the face, and then walk straight away and come back tomorrow. And then once you do that enough, you won't be scared of standing in their presence.
Yeah.
Then you go a little bit closer. Then
Yeah.
eventually you make eye contact. Then maybe you shake the hand. then after
then
a
you
few weeks,
stroke the hair.
no, it may be like, hey, what's up?
Good enemy. Hello.
Yeah. And then they'll be like, hey, what's up? And then you start to have a dialogue. And slowly, over the span of weeks, months, years, you start to become little better friends. It doesn't mean that if you do something stupid, they won't bite you.
Right.
But it's like having a dog.
Yeah.
You can, like, if a dog was treated badly and it's really aggressive, then you have to be careful at the start. But then with enough care and effort from your side, I think people expect fears to dismiss themselves.
No, but it's coming back to what you were talking about having a practice, right? That's, I think, what it really boils down to, is having a practice and having sort of a daily no excuses attitude towards this practice or this skill or this movement or whatever you want to learn or get better at. Because I think it's only through that you break the patterns of fear, apprehensions, expectations, etc., is exactly like what you said, is just sort of getting closer and closer to it every single day.
There's a biological reason that we have to do it this way. Do you know why? Sarah?
Why? Here we go. I'm going to pick up my pencil and my notebook and write down notes. Go ahead. Tell us.
It's very simple. In nature, most things that are what I call accumulation phenomena, they change over time. This is the process of adaptation. Anything in nature, same. Have you ever seen a palm tree in the wind?
Yeah.
Right at the shoreline.
I do a very
How do
good
they grow
impression
in that?
of a palm tree in the wind, by the way. I will show it to you the next time I see you.
Yeah. So if you've ever seen palm trees at the coast, you'll realize that, like, if you try to move them, you can't move them,
No,
right?
of course not.
But you'll see that they actually grow in this, not straight up,
Yeah.
but they actually grow into the wind. You'll notice this, although this is like a very uniform phenomenon across the thing. If this is the beach and the wind is coming in like this, a palm tree will always grow like this.
Okay.
It's very simple. The reason being, because the wind is constantly blowing inward, sea breeze, which is the strong one. If the tree were vertical, it would keep getting pushed, and eventually topple.
Right.
So as it's growing, it realizes that the most stable direction to grow in is actually in towards the wind.
Right.
So that it's like you're leaning against it, it's pushing you. So the same way you're leaning against someone, if they're pushing you, you'll still be stable.
Yeah.
But if you were standing straight and someone pushed you, you'd fall over.
Right.
So trees actually do this all the time. It's just that continuous process of leaning into the wind and exposing yourself to that effect. Um, and yes, you will grow in a different shape entirely,
Yeah.
but it's a process of adaptation.
Yeah.
It has to be exposed to that wind every day. If it wasn't exposed to that wind and it was leaning, it would fall.
Right. I love that idea,
So
Cyrus. I love that idea of leaning into what I'm going to call of leaning into your fear. I'm going to say that. Just leaning into your fear and learning more about it and then adapting towards it. That's such a great thought. Um,
it's
so,
any discomfort, really.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not just fear.
Just fear. Any
Sometimes there are
discomfort.
other discomforts that are, embarrassment, anger, sometimes just ickiness. It's really funny. But parkour is a really good practice to practice this, because parkour doesn't tolerate any excuses. It's like,
No.
I know people like, because we why do you think we crawl around in mucky, dirty gardens, and roll, and cover ourselves in sweat, and all of this is really a practice of being. You'll find all of these disciplines
Yeah.
have all these lessons intrinsically hidden in them.
Yeah.
They won't make it explicit to you.
Yeah.
And only once you go through them will you realize, the same way I did.
Yeah.
So if you're someone that's starting out and you don't understand all of this,
No
it's
worries.
absolutely meant to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But because you don't have time to understand at the start.
No, that's what I
you
said.
have to
You
do.
don't have the time to think. You really are. You warm up and then
You have
you're
to
right
do.
there and then you're doing it. And then it's only after you get done with class, maybe like a couple of hours after that, a few epiphanies hit you and you're like, that's what I did. But you spoke, I'm just going to go back a little bit, and you were talking about something beautiful. You're talking about adapting and leaning into, and you also said the words no excuses. Now, the last 1 year has restricted movement for a lot of people in many ways, right? Because, well, quite simply speaking, people were sort of used to getting out of the house to move. And somehow now it's become a permanent excuse not to move because people have gotten so used to sort of sitting and working from home, et cetera, et cetera. So just before we end this interview, I want you to give your top 3 no excuse, let's say, ideas for people who are saying that they can't move. Like, what are your 2? Like, if someone were to come up to you and say, Cyrus, I can't move at home because I can't move too much because I'm working from home all the time, blah, blah, blah. What are the top 3 things that you would say to them?
I have one thing to say.
Okay, go for it.
It's like, okay, don't.
That's hardly going to be inspiring to anybody, Cyrus.
Again, I'll tell you why.
Right.
The main thing is, first of all, you said no excuses. I didn't say no excuses.
Right.
And it's primarily because I believe in excuses. I totally believe in excuses. And I'll tell you why.
Why?
Like, because if you just have to be aware that you're making the excuse.
But most people
and then
aren't, are
if
they?
That's the problem.
Yeah.
You see, they think it's a justification.
Precisely.
Once you're aware it's an excuse, then you have to live with that. See, I don't believe in excuses. I believe in choices.
Right.
Everybody's making choices.
Right.
An excuse is a choice in one direction that you're trying to pretend is a choice in the other direction. So I don't force people to do things. If they want to sit at home and they want to continue sitting at home for the rest of their lives, if that's their choice, then I mean, go ahead.
Yeah.
But you have to accept the consequences of that.
Yeah.
So I try never to. It's hard, especially I'll tell you, it's hardest with the people that I love,
Yeah.
because then the people you care for,
Yeah, I hear
because
you.
you really want to
I hear you.
change
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
But this is something I'm learning more and more. Is you can't change other people really.
Yeah.
The desire has to come from within. All you can do is make everybody aware of. You can help them be aware of what they're doing, and you can help them be aware of what they need to be doing if they want a certain thing.
Yeah.
But I firmly believe that just that awareness alone is enough, in the sense that if someone who is sitting at home, then they need to be aware that a process of adaptation is going on constantly,
Right.
where your body doesn't keep the things and abilities that it needs, that it doesn't need. So if you were only planning to sit at one place the rest of your life, your body will adapt to that. It will dissolve your muscles because you don't have any need for it. It will accumulate fat because it seems like you need it because you're in this
Sitting in
hibernative
one
state.
place. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It will do all of these things. And people are then surprised when their internal medical chemical markers are all over the place, because there are other changes happening, like a constant exposure to uh, like all types light at all times of the day. People have all time, like their digestive markers are all over the place because they're eating all the time. Their sleep patterns are disabled because they don't have a sleep schedule. Their blood circulation's poor because they're not circulating it. Their heart gets weak. Their arteries get clogged. I mean, we know what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
All we Everybody knows that. So all we have to do is be aware of what we're doing. So instead of saying I'm choosing not to go, you have to essentially make people aware that they're choosing to not do something, but they're also choosing all these other things. They're also choosing muscle loss. They're also choosing all of these other long-term consequences that aren't visible super immediately,
Yeah. But over a
but
period of time,
it's
they do
pretty
take place.
clear
Yeah.
that it happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I'm in these situations where I have a choice,
Yeah.
I think just being aware helps me make a better decision about what I choose to do,
Yeah.
or whether I choose to walk or take a cab, or as I do, I have a bike for all my local travel. Um,
Excellent.
and sometimes, you don't feel like doing a certain thing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I genuinely don't. And then it's fine. Then it's not an excuse again, because you are aware of what you're doing and you
Right.
make a choice.
And you're making
I
a
don't think
choice. Yeah.
anyone should be criminalized for making
Yeah.
any choice that they make
Yeah.
when it comes to their own body,
Yeah.
as long as they're aware of the consequences. But I've found, being a teacher, that as soon as you make people aware of what they're doing, then they'll make the choice that's best for them.
Okay. So I think to sum up what I've gathered, and this is a really, I mean, there are many things that you brought to light which are going to stick with me. But I think to conclude, this idea of it's not really about making excuses, it's about choices that come from awareness. So thank you. This has been absolutely amazing having this conversation with you. Thank you for all your insights. That was Parkour athlete and trainer and physicist Cyrus Khan on the show with me today. And in all that talk about movement, ups, downs, or lack thereof, two things stood out to me. One, there are days when we feel like we're not at our optimum level of functioning, mentally or physically. However, it's about choices, not excuses. And two, our human bodies are like instruments, unlimited potential, and it's about how we choose to put them to use by interacting with the world around us. Do check out the show notes for more, and you can follow Cyrus and his amazing work. And for more feel-good vibes, go to Figoco, that's F-E-G-O-C-O, on Instagram.